Hi, students. This is Ms. Adams. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a trip I took to Mexico about 15 years ago. I was one of a group of 16 teachers from across the United States who was chosen to travel through Mexico and Canada. It was called the Fulbright Hayes Scholarship, and it was through the U.S. government. And so I got a lot of opportunities to go places. I started in Washington, D.C. I got to go to a dinner at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. Then we traveled to Mexico for 3 weeks, then to Canada for 3 weeks. So it was really kind of an amazing experience. And in this part of the trip, I'm going to tell you about Oaxaca and my time there. I went to Monte Alban, which we saw in my first video, and a lot more has been excavated. And then I went to the biggest pyramid in the world, which is not in Egypt, surprisingly, but is in Mexico. So let me make myself disappear and I will present this video. So I'm going to start here with this little map. You can see the Yucatan Peninsula, and then right here is Monte Alban. And I will show that. Let me go back to my map. And we can see that Mexico City is more up here. So I'm farther south. And one of the things we did was the first thing I'm going to show you is we went to the home of some weavers. There are a lot of people in Mexico who make their living on the tourist trade. And prior to that, they were much poorer. And so one of the things people like to buy when they come to Mexico is some weaving. Now, before the Spanish came, they were weaving, but they were weaving with cotton. When the Spanish came, they introduced them to sheep, and now they use like a cotton structure, and then they use wool. And so I'll show you about that. So I wanted you to see the door to the area where their home is. Their home consists of a lot of like small little buildings with dirt floors. And but you can see that the door to the gate of the fence they had around it, those are coffee cans, and they are cut and flattened out and put together to make the door in their gate. You can see some examples of their weaving. It's very sought after and desirable. Particularly those red colors are very appealing, and they're trying to make a living. So although we were invited and got spoken to about how they did it in demonstration, they also wanted us to buy things while we were there, and I did come home with a few items. So here's a loom, and you can see they made bags and wall hangings and all kinds of small and large items. So the indigenous people of the Oaxacan area are Zapotecs. And Zapotec people are traditionally very small and short. And you can see that the women there are men who live there. They must have been at work somewhere else. The man in the back in the cowboy hat was the professor from the university who took us there. But you can see how small these women are, and they were all wearing their aprons. And they came around and gave us what they said was a traditional Oaxacan greeting. They said something to us in their original language, the Oaxacan language, and then they shook both of our hands and gave us the greeting. And the woman that you can see with the blue apron right here, she's the one who spoke to us. She spoke very good English and actually has talked and traveled to the United Nations in New York City and met with many people. So she's very accomplished. Everyone's getting the greeting. And then they said, we sat around, they said, oh, the grandmother was going to come out and greet all of us. So you can see that they're small, but the grandma is tiny. And she also gave us a greeting. And then she sat down on what I consider the world's smallest chair for an adult. And then I took this picture of all their aprons just because it's so much part of what they were wearing. And they served us a meal. Now, I want to talk to you about what it's like to go to a place where you're served a meal and you're not exactly sure what you're going to have, or whether you might get sick from it. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but anytime you travel, there are just going to be different types of things that might cause you some problems. And especially in Mexico, where they have some issues with their water, it's something to be concerned about. Now, I do want to point out that we're in one of these little rooms, their dining area, and it has a dirt floor. They had us wash our hands in a galvanized steel tub with a hose and a bar of ivory soap. And then we went in there, and then I was thinking, okay, I've been really careful on this trip not to get sick, and I want to um, be a good guest, not turning my nose up at what they say, but I'm a little nervous about the ice cubes that are floating in that. That's like an iced tea, but made with hibiscus flowers. And so I just drank mine really fast when we sat down to eat. And then I didn't take any photos of the food because this was a while ago before that was all the rage. But they served us a soup that had a corn cob floating in it. And the corn on the corn cob was kind of really tough and big. I'd say it was more like hominy, which is a kind of a corn they eat more in the South. The only reason I'm familiar with it is once we accidentally bought a can at the grocery store when I was a kid, and then we didn't like it, but our mom made us finish it because we'd opened it. But it was kind of like that. So I just kind of took the corn cob out of the soup. It was kind of a broth with some greens floating in it, and just ate the corn off the corn cob. And then we got rice, and the rice had grasshoppers in it. And so I was very pleased that I had actually eaten the grasshoppers a day or two before when I had been at the market, so that I wasn't so unfamiliar with them. And I do have to say that I was surprised at how, grasshoppers really do remind you of like shrimp. And why do we eat shrimp but not grasshoppers? So I think when you go places, you need to be respectful of the people. I tried them. They were fine. I wasn't desiring any more, but nothing went wrong. You can see that some of the art here is very religious because the majority of people in Mexico are Catholic, as this family was. And then they talked to us about the weaving and showed us different types of things that they made. They showed us how they have the wool that they shear off the sheep, and then they clean it in water. You can see how dirty it is, and they use the basket, and then they dry it. They put it out to dry. They showed us, this is some other that had already dried. They kind of combed it two ways, sort of like the kind of brush you might brush a dog with. It had that sort of comb to it. And then they're turning it into something like this. Then they spin it on a spinning wheel. And then, this is the interesting thing. So I told you that the red was very desirable. And they make this red from a bug. And as they do it, they came around and showed it to us. You can see the red color to it, and it comes off of like a cactus. And then when somebody came by, they took the bug and like rubbed it on my hand, which I didn't really enjoy, but they laughed about. And it was a pretty red color on my hand. Here she is. She's weaving, cutting it, combing it. She's doing the fringe with her hand. So then they said, we're Christians, we're Catholic, but we don't have very good health care here. So our mother is also a healer, and she is going to demonstrate a healing ceremony. So she said she was going to demonstrate it on the leader of our group, but then one of the teachers, this woman on the chair in the purple shirt, her name is Helen. She's a teacher from Alaska. She said that she would like to have the healing done to her. So Helen sat in the chair, and the mother went out and she cut a bunch of plants. And I think she told me what they were in Spanish. And some people who are Spanish teachers, I think, told me that there was some rosemary and maybe some other, I can't remember what the other herbs are now, but some other plants. And she had a big thing of rubbing alcohol, like you might see at a doctor's office. And she then took the rubbing alcohol and the plants, and she rubbed all over Helen's forehead and over her shoulders and her arms. She said it would help relieve the stress to her. And then she got an egg. And so she took the egg and she had us pass it all around and listen to it and shake it. It just seemed like a regular egg to me. And then she took the egg and she rubbed it all over Helen in the same places where she had put the herbs. and the plants. And she said that that egg was going to take the stress out of Helen and it was going to come into the egg. So then she sent the egg around to all of us and said, now can you tell the difference? Which I'm going to report I could not tell any difference between when I had felt it before and after. So she took the egg and she broke it into she had a glass of water. She broke the egg into the glass of water. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe she's going to make Helen drink that egg, kind of like they did in Rocky. But instead, she read the egg like tea leaves, I guess is what you'd say. And she said that Helen had too much stress and that she didn't eat enough fruits and vegetables, which Helen did tell me later was true. So then she told us to push all of our chairs back so we didn't get burnt. And I can remember thinking, uh-oh, what's going to happen now? And I can't believe I'm here when literally the week before I had been teaching 6th grade in the Maple Valley. But I also want to point out that although I took some pictures, I want to be respectful. I wanted to be in the moment and experience this amazing thing that most people don't have a chance to see. But I also, as a teacher, wanted to take it back to my students and tell them about what I had seen. So I did take some photos, but not a ton. So here's Helen. I didn't take pictures while she was really rubbing it on Helen. But here she came with, she had kind of a thing of incense. And she then poured the rubbing alcohol in a circle around Helen and she lit it on fire. So Helen literally was in a ring of fire, which was kind of amazing and surprising and a little frightening. And you can see here it is, the ring of fire. And here she is. She came around with the incense and she blessed all of us. You can see it. Here's the wool as we're getting ready to leave. We're on our bus and we can see a donkey taking things around because that's kind of the way it is there. And then we went out to Monte Alban. Now, when I had been there many years earlier, remember it was the winter, but it was very dry. I'm here in the end of June, and you can see that it's really green because in Mexico, like a lot of places, it rains a lot in the summer, but not in the winter. I mean, it rained many, many afternoons, kind of a warm rain. So they've excavated a lot more, and I'm just going to quickly go through. We had this college professor give us a tour, and it's a fairly warm day. You can see so much more has been excavated. It has a beautiful view, and you can see all the places they've left behind. They're still excavating and still finding more. It's a huge site and really quite amazing. The people that lived there were the Zapotecs, like those women, the weavers, and they are known for building these more flat structures that are not like the Aztec pyramids. And they have these sort of circular columns. They also, if you look out there, are known for these ball courts where they played different games. And people have always liked to play games and compete against each other. So you can see Monte Alban is really an amazing spot. More columns, more stairs. Where you're at maybe higher than Mexico City, maybe like 8,000 feet or so. So it's pretty high up, a high altitude. It was a very nice day. Really beautiful place. Lots and lots more to explore. Here's some Zapotec native peoples visiting. Here I am now. I wanted to be sure and get this because remember when I showed the picture of my friend in the last video where she was standing in front of what they said were dancers, but now they believe are, or she was kneeling down next to them. Now they say they probably were slaves. Well, now obviously you can see the little fence. You can't get close to them. And they have way more excavated and some inside, maybe the more valuable ones. So you can see those. All right, so now we're back on our bus and we're heading to Puebla. I just wanted you to see a little bit of how like you have to pay to go through these toll roads, but also it looks a lot to me like as we traveled, it reminded me of like the drive to Yakima or Eastern Washington. So you can see that. So in Puebla is a major, huge, major city. But the part of it I really want you to see was we went to see this pyramid. It's called Cholula, and it is the largest archaeological site in North or South America. And it also is the largest pyramid per volume in all of the world. So the Great Pyramid at Giza is taller, but this one is bigger. But it's not what you think of when you see the pyramid. And if you look at that little structure, we had a college professor meet us there, and she told us about it. And so she's that woman in white, the small woman right here. And we went, and this pyramid has had several pyramids built on top of each other. And then they built these tunnels so you could go in there. I will say, if you're claustrophobic, it's not really the place for you. You're not allowed to take any flash photos. So my photos aren't great, but they're the best photos I could get because I was just carrying a point and shoot camera. You can see a lot of different steps that go up, or the parts of different pyramids that were there. There's the woman that led us. I can't remember her name, showing us around. Other parts of it, some of it behind a little door so people don't go up there. This one just looked like it would go up forever and ever. Obviously, I hate seeing this, but even at this amazing archaeological site, somebody had to, spray paint it. So that was terrible. I wouldn't want to go in there without a guide because I know there was a lot of tunnel area that I felt like you could get lost in it. Maybe that was just me being worried about it, but it was kind of fascinating and really a little wild to be thinking that you're inside of it. Now, here's the pyramid. Now, that doesn't really look much like a pyramid, does it? Because the pyramid was covered. The Spanish wanted it destroyed, but in the end, it was covered with dirt, and they built a Catholic church. The Spanish built a church on the top of it. They say they don't even know if the Spanish realized that it was a pyramid. So you can go up all those steps. You're actually walking on the outside of the pyramid that they put steps on. They covered it in dirt. Obviously, all those plants grew over time. And then here are the steps. Here's the inside of the church. Catholic church. It's really beautiful. You're pretty high up there, and it has a beautiful view. Then we came back down, and on one side they've done quite a bit of excavation. I'm sure there's a lot more to do. Archaeology is always time consuming and kind of slow, and here they're working on it. You can see steps, different areas. Where there was paint at one time, that is an Olmec head. The Toltecs built this pyramid, but there's an Olmec head there. The people traveled around, and different groups, fought each other and conquered different areas. Here's where they had some different kinds of things left behind, where they might have done some of their rituals, whatever those rituals might be.